1013 Kilo 20. Coordinating aileron and rudder, bank, balance, bank pressure, rolling to 30 degrees. That's 30 degrees there. Left runway 29 1631.
G'day everyone and welcome to episode 69 of the Flight Training Australia podcast, a podcast all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. I'm your host Trent Robinson, thank you for joining me. Welcome to another week. It's been incredibly wet up here in Darwin. The frogs have been going off. We've got way too many in our garden and the neighbours' gardens, but that's the tropics and wouldn't change it for anything. Though it does make recording a little bit challenging sometimes. But look, it's been really good. Heaps of flying still going on and heaps of recruitment going on. I've seen quite a few new faces up here. A lot of new training, line training going on in amongst the monsoon. Probably, not the best time to be trying to do it, but also a great time to be doing it, to have that exposure to that sort of weather with the safety blanket of someone with you that knows what they're doing and is familiar with the area. We have a great episode waiting today. Joining me today are 6 aviators, all at different stages and locations in their careers. And I thought it'd be really awesome to have a group chat and listen to their stories, their chosen pathways, trials and tribulations, triumphs and failures, to help you all with your journey and maybe even help understand that it's not just you feeling and experiencing these things. So my guests today are ranging from first job, just starting out in GA, right through to the end and into the airlines. So before we start, let's just go around the room and meet everybody. And we'll start with Chloe. How are you going?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Very, very well. So, Chloe, do you want to just take us through quickly where you're at in your career starting out, and then we'll go through from everyone from there.
Yeah, so I got my commercial license middle of last year, and I am just doing my check to line at the moment at my employer up in Darwin. And I have about 200 hours. And yeah, I've been flying for about 3 years.
Awesome. All right. Sam.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Sam. I did my training back in 2019, 2020. Finished my MECA, PPL, CPL there. And then I went on to do my flight instructor rating, grade 3, the following year. And then got couple of jobs instructing, and then now I moved over to Broome since August last year, and I'm working as a scenic and charter pilot out here.
Fantastic. All right. Isaiah, over in Gove.
G'day guys. Yeah, nice to meet everyone. I've been flying for just under 2 years now as a Cessna 210 line pilot for the last 8 months. Finished up my training last year and I hold a CPL MECA in just around 700 hours.
Brilliant. All right. Austin.
Morning, mate. How are you?
Very well.
Good. So I got my CPL in 2018 and instructor rating grade 3 just shortly afterwards. But it just finished up at Brisbane Aviators for the last 11 months last year. So that was great. And currently just waiting for my new job at Aerometrics, which is great.
Cool. I will look forward to talking about that in a minute. And Mike.
G'day, mate. How you going?
Very well.
Yeah. I got a CPL airplane and helicopter. I'm a bit older than these young pups. I've been flying just over 30 years, and I've got just under 2,000 hours.
Fantastic. All right. And finally, Alex.
Hello, my name is Alex. I got my commercial license back in 2016. I immediately went on to get my instructor rating. Decided I wasn't interested in that and went up to Darwin to start a charter path. Been up here for about 5.5 years. I've got 3,500 hours. I went into checking and training with my company Charter, and I'm now about to start with Qantas next week.
Fantastic. Very exciting times. All right. Well, let's work through the process, everybody, and go through each of your stories. So, Chloe, come back to you. Firstly, how did you find your training experience?
Very different, particularly up to where I am now in Darwin. So I was a school teacher first in Melbourne for 5 years, and I just took some kids to France, and I was on my way back and I was just so excited about planes. Always had been, and Dad had always said, you're not allowed to fly, you've got to go do something else. And then I just pretty much came back and said, I just want to learn to fly a plane. And he said, cool, go do it, but you've got to pay for it. So 2020, I did my first flight, and that's when Victoria went into some pretty significant lockdowns. So it was a pretty rocky start to begin with. And then, just spent the next 2.5 years working full-time as a teacher, doing night school, stacking shelves at Bunnings, working at the flying school, pretty much trying to earn as much money as I could so I could pay for my flight training.
Yeah,
Here we
brilliant.
are.
And what sort of jobs were you doing for that?
School teacher full-time, high school, and teaching maths and science. And then, stocking shelves at Bunnings, working registers, making coffees. Then I worked in operations at my flying school. So, like checking students in and out, and then booking charters and managing all of that. So it was pretty full on.
And Bunnings is the GA staple, so that's good. That or a bottle, though. So well done. And how did you find working in operations? I mean, again, you're just starting out up here in Darwin, but how did you find? Have you found that experience has been helpful with what's going on now, and just getting an idea of how it all works?
Yeah, so I suppose one part of it was like managing aircraft and making sure that aircraft had enough hours for like going out and like managing the maintenance and when we were going to get it done and fit it in to keep the flying school operational. So I suppose that translates into the charter world as well, is trying to make sure, thinking about when we're going to have time to manage the aircraft going into maintenance and seeing that side of it. So it all kind of lines up, but the charter world is very different to the flying school world. I'll grant that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did you sort of end up in Darwin? What was your, I guess, where along your commercial training did you start really thinking about what do I want to do once this is all finished?
Yeah, so I always had the intention that I was going to come up here. I kind of started following Dad's footsteps. He was a pilot. He was in Darwin. So it was like, I became a pilot. I'm now in Darwin. So I kind of followed that, but I just purely by luck at the end of my instrument rating, I'd applied a few months prior to Air Frontier, and I had got a call just at the end of my instrument rating to say, hey, can you come up for an interview? I was sick, yeah, on my way. So I came up and spent a couple of days up here, had an interview and got to know a few people. And then a few months went by, and then I got a phone call on the Thursday night to say, hey, you've got a job. Can you start on Monday? And I was like, yeah, no worries.
Awesome.
So I was on a flight straight up here trying to find somewhere to live. And yeah, here we are.
Yeah, it don't get too much notice sometimes, do you? Especially recently with the movement. It's been, get up here. And people have had to get family or friends to help transport their stuff up or just leave it at home, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. That's what lucky my partner has just packed up the entire house and shipped it up for me. Driven up from Melbourne twice, so it's pretty good. So
Sam, your similar kind of situation moving up. You did teaching but instructing. So how was that to sort of what chose that pathway for you?
So I actually was a teacher previously for 7 years. I taught kindergarten to save money for flight training. And I thought like it'll be a great idea to do instructing as well. So that was always been on my mind since I started training. And then when the whole COVID thing hit, we were like, oh, well, this is probably the worst time to get into aviation. So kind of naturally just like, well, might as well just do instructor training. So I actually worked at 2 different flying schools before getting a job out here in Broome. And it was very similar as well. Very much just like, you got an interview, how soon can you get here? I was like, I'll fly there next Tuesday. And then it's like, got the job, how soon can you move here? I was like, okay, I'll move here within 2 weeks, and just packed up and sold everything and drove over from Brisbane within like 5 days. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a big step, and I think people probably maybe not so prepared for that. That when you push that button, it just happens, doesn't it? So when you're just throwing resumes out everywhere, you might not realize it's going to happen very quickly. Sometimes it seems to take forever. So it's a bit of a roll of the dice, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. And how are you finding flying out of Broome at the moment, especially now with a bit of wet season? I know You've had some good days of a bit of interesting flying the last few weeks.
I mean, like you push your limits, and then there's like when you really push your limits. So you get commercial pressure from your boss, from your coworkers, and you have other people pushing your lines, and different operators out here have different requirements, and they will one day will say, why can they do it and why can't you do it, kind of thing. And you're like, well, I don't feel comfortable, our aircraft is not up to par, and like there's all these different. But yeah, it definitely makes you a better pilot being out here and having to make those hard decisions for yourself. Where's your line and where's your minimas and where's other people's minimas, and try not to compare, and then trying at the same time not to let your boss like pressure you into extending your own limits to a point where you feel extremely uncomfortable. I mean, that's definitely happened to me once or twice out here. Getting pretty sticky situations, and you're like, let's not do that again.
Yeah, and then it's very much like you say, just because you see another pilot in the same company or even other companies going, that pressure to have to get going. Like right now, Chloe's talking to us because she was meant to be somewhere, but the weather's just terrible here in Darwin at the moment. We've got the full monsoon hitting, and it's just started pouring again. But what is your sort of process for deciding whether you're going to go or not, regardless of what everyone else is doing?
So most of the time, like I would just like check the weather in the morning, see how we're going. I'll talk to other couple of other pilots that are like flying around the same time and where they're going. If it looks semi okay, I always have contingencies saying like along the route, like where can I land? Where's my emergency fuel stops? Always have it in the back of your mind, like, like where's my plan B? Where can I get out? Like if I have to do 180, and if holes close up behind me, what am I going to do? So always just have that in mind, and then always talk to like every single body else on the channel and be like, hey, how's the weather looking like? Hey, fly dog, what's it looking at like a derby? Just keep talking to people on the radio, and then center is always there to help. So you can always request like stuff if you're not run out of cell range or something. So that's always been my contingency. And it's like, check your lowest safe. If it gets pushed down, understand like the terrain, what's happening, and always have like roads as well. It's like, where are the roads? Like, are you following the roads? Like if it push come to shove, like if you have to scud run, that's the way into, an airdrome. So I had that in mind.
I'm pleased to hear you talking about contacting centre, because that's something people obviously shy away from, I guess, because it kind of very much publicizes their predicament, doesn't it? It's sort of people who go, oh, that's Sam's voice. But, pride and things can't come in. Yeah, put on your radio voice. Yeah. I think that's why we all do it, isn't it? We have our radio voice. But, getting that help. And like you say, you can pick other people's knowledge that, hey, it's clear over here or whatever. And it just can take such a load off, can't it?
Yeah, because you can't really tell. Like if it just looks kind of scattered and you're like kind of traveling, just above it, and you're like, oh, it looks overcast. And you're like, what am I doing? And the people at the front are like, oh, no, it's fine. You can see. It's like, okay.
Yes, just not where I'm going. Yeah. All right, Isaiah. So, what was your training background, mate, before you sort of ended up in Gove there?
Yeah, so I did all my training out of FTA Queensland. So just a full integrated course, knocked everything out in a year. And I mean, after that, I had a sort of a pretty stock standard entry into the aviation industry. When I finished, was sort of tossing up between GA or instructing. And I spoke to a mate of mine who had done some time in both. Cheers to Joshy Bennett, if you're listening to this. And he sort of recommended cutting my teeth in GA, mainly for the experience side of thing. Like, it's a pretty unique job and makes for some really cool stories. So I set myself up in Darwin, just handing out resumes, and for a while, and was lucky enough to land the job with my current employer.
Yeah, all right. Well, take me through that application process. So, how did you go about it?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing, if you sort of haven't got the contacts in the industry already, is just to be there. So, setting yourself up in Darwin and just, the same time every week, handing in a resume, showing your face, trying to get to know pilots. I think that was, sort of how I went about it. I didn't know too many people in the industry. So I thought that was the best, is just to be up there, show face, and try and get to know people that way.
Yeah, good idea. And Alex, I don't know if you probably don't now, but I know there's a decent social pilot scene up here in Darwin, and everyone sort of met down at the waterfront there or whatever, and there's quiz nights and all that sort of thing. Did you get involved in any of that at all in the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, there was a great bunch of people up here for a number of years, and especially when COVID first kind of affected us, everyone got stuck. So we ended up with this group of pilots who we'd known for the last 3 years. And there was just, you'd be invited to a party or go out with people, and there's 60 or 70 people going out, and you just get to know everyone. You know everyone across the strip. You'll just be walking across the strip and you'll see 5 people that you know and just be waving and talking about whatever you want to talk about. It's a lot of fun when people get to stick around for a bit longer and you get to know everyone.
Yeah, we're not getting that stick around much at the moment. Everyone's it's like, why are you still here? What's going on? Yeah, all right. And as I just with the application side of things, and how did you find your interview process? And you got any tips for listeners in that aspect?
No, I probably don't really, because I got really lucky. The first interview that I got the job out of. So I've sort of only had the one experience to draw from. I think the biggest thing, though, is if you feel that there's an opportunity there, try your best to not sort of take no for an answer. Like when I first rocked up to my current employer, was met at the gate with my resume, and they said, "Oh yeah, no one's really around today. If you can come back later, or maybe later on in the week." And I said, "Yeah, sure. I'll just sort of hang around if you don't mind. If you guys need help around the hangar," and was just sort of washing a plane, sweeping around the hangar for the day. And then end of the day, the chief pilot said, "Oh, if you're happy to have an interview now, we can do one now."
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, sure. I was like, yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Mike, how skipping ahead a little bit, so you've moved into a regional airline. How did you find the application process for that? Because you're in a similar boat, that you kind of never really applied for anything up until that point, had you? You sort of got an interesting story from your flying career and leading up to the ability to apply for that job.
Oh, I think you're being very kind saying it's interesting, Trent. But I guess age is, I'm 53, and when I was 30 in Australia, if you went in an airline, that was it. You'd missed the boat. Things have changed now. I applied widely, and fortunately, one of the things that goes with age is people will know of you, and if your reputation's reasonable or better than reasonable, you might get a look in, and I did.
All right, Austin, how did you find going from an instructional background to what you're about to walk into, and was there anything or lack of charter background? Did that come up in your interview process? And if you just want to take us through your what you're about to go into.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I'm doing, well, soon to be doing, is aerial surveying, so multi-IFR. And if we're basing that off an instructor standpoint, it's two very different things. You go from being on the right-hand seat to the left-hand seat to begin with as well. It is quite a large change for some people, including myself. But the lack of charter wasn't too much of an issue for them, because there's no sort of strict demand of getting to A to B. It's you have another crew member on board who operates the equipment behind you. It's all about safety. And the job's always number 2. Safety is always number 1, from what I've learned with these guys as well. Instructing has always been something that I've loved doing. It's great, but it's just something that I wanted to try and this multi-IFR actually expand my expertise in this.
Yeah. No, interesting talk about safety. I actually attended a CASA seminar the other day, and they basically gave us the words schedule, passenger comfort, safety, and economy to put in an order. And it was interesting, the order that we put them in that feels like the politically correct, what we want everyone to hear us say, versus probably the reality of where that gets put. And safety wasn't necessarily on the top because, for a lot of companies, economy is going to be a major driving force, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, cool. All right. And mate, so talk about your instructional experience there. What did you sort of learn during that process there, and what are you going to take into this new role?
Patience is the number one thing that I've learned. I'm only 22 years old, so first job, I'm still young, so I still have a lot of learning to do, at least I believe. But instructing was amazing. I loved every minute of it, and had the opportunity to have a passion for aviation and pass that on to new students that want to follow that same passion as you, and being professional, following your SOPs, being diligent and disciplined with the way that you teach. You can't cut corners with teaching, and I'm sure a lot of the instructors here will agree. But I want to take that on into my new career. There's no cutting corners. You have to be safe. Field plans, nav plans, IPC training, and then etc. I haven't done that since 2019, so that was a good thing to get done. But just the patience is one thing.
Yeah, and what made you decide to move on from instructing? Because I know a lot of people, instructing is a fantastic path. And like, as I've said, I had a great mix of charter and instructing, so I was very fortunate, but you've been a pure instructor background, and it's very easy to get comfortable and maybe almost a little dormant in that role. So what sort of sparked this isn't a job available locally, so you're moving interstate.
Yeah, no, definitely. I've always wanted to instruct, and I always see myself going back into an instructing role. But just personally, I think I just want to increase my knowledge basis. So I don't want to stay an instructor forever, purely teaching RPL, PPL, CPL. If I want to be able to get to the stage of multi-engine IFR, training, etc., I want to have some life experience. So that's primarily the main reason that I did move on, is to try and what's the word I'm looking for? Not increase my vocabulary, but just increase
your skill set and your range.
Yeah, just increase my knowledge.
No, I think you've done well. It's good. It's a really good thing. And you got grade 2 at the end, did you?
No, still grade 3.
No, not quite.
Close to grade 2. Yeah, nearly on 20 hours to go, if that.
Well, that's all right. That's all right. All right. Alex, so whereabouts did you start with your training? And like I said, you tried instructing, but sort of decided it wasn't really for you, at least not in the format that it was. You've obviously ended up back into it, but do you want to take us through that?
Yeah. My training in general was really scattered, I guess you could say. I started my flight training in Perth through uni, and then I decided to make the move over east, and I got all the way up to my CPL, but then the flight school went into receivership, so I didn't get to finish my CPL. I then just made the move back to WA, went to the Aero Club there, finished my CPL instrument rating, decided I always was interested in check-in training, so I figured it was probably the best opportunity to do an instructor rating. And then straight off that course, I got offered a job shortly after with the Aero Club. Stayed with them for just under a year and decided ab initio training wasn't for me.
Yeah.
I like building on someone's knowledge, not creating the foundation.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I made the move up to Darwin, decided to get some experience for myself, some hands-on flying. And whilst I was up here, my company enabled me to increase my instructor ratings. I became an instrument rating instructor and a multi-engine instructor. So I then had the opportunity to go into check-in training instead, which is the path that I always wanted to go down. And I was lucky enough to be able to do that.
Yeah, brilliant. So For someone like Chloe, who's just sort of starting her line training, what sort of advice would you give to her and others in her situation that are just about to start or are currently in that process, or maybe about to change platforms, maybe go single to multi? What sort of things have you seen, and what would you advise?
I guess the majority of, not so much issues that we come across, but when people do make that step from single engine to multi-engine, more often than not, that also comes with VFR to IFR. More candidates now, because when you get into an organization, they'll pay for your like IPC renewal. And so more often than not, these candidates are coming through and they haven't done an IPC since their initial training. And that could have been years ago. And the problem with that is if you haven't kept it current, or at least, been practicing, you don't necessarily need to do the test, but at least keep it current, keep practicing your scan, your flows, everything. That will make it easier for the next step, because after your initial, if you don't keep it current, you're basically learning a whole new instrument rating again, because all those skills have lapsed.
Yeah.
So it's super
costly.
important to stay on top. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. All right. So, Chloe, have you done a flight yet? I think you've managed one or two.
Yeah, I've only got 3 sectors left to meet the minimum requirements.
Great. So, what was your from when I first met you on the tarmac there? I think you guys had all just sort of rocked up. What was the line training process like, and what have you done to prepare yourself so far? And do you feel that's been enough, or is it been like, wow, I need to do so much more here?
Yeah, so I guess it kind of sprung on me, hey, we're going flying. So I started working in the hangar, and so our hours are 4:30 to 1:30, so 4:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. working in the hangar, just working on the aircraft and learning some general maintenance and stuff with the engineers. So I was doing that, and then there was sort of 9 a.m., hey, we're going flying. And I was like, well, what? I'd been learning through, our company has flows. So you learn the SOPs, you learn the flow, and then look at the checklist to confirm you've done it, rather than just following a checklist. So anyway, I had sort of started learning them, but everything just sort of seemed to be on the back burner. Like there was just a backlog of other pilots to get through first and other higher priorities, which is fine. And so I sort of maybe just put it on the back burner, worked myself in the hangar and really focused my skill there of learning the aircraft in a different sense. And then, it was like, we're going flying. I was like, oh, no, I don't really know everything. So I think the one thing that I could have to improve was stayed on top of it a little bit more. But then from there, everything that was last Monday. And now I'm getting towards the end to be checked to line. So it sort of happened really quickly. Once they sort of say, hey, we're going to get started, it seems to just be like, bang, 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 we're getting you through. We need pilots, because it's very volatile industry at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot going on. So what sort of exposure to the wet season have you had so far, and how have you found that? Apart from today, obviously being grounded.
Yeah. Well, I've tried to fly the last 3 days, and obviously with this monsoonal trough just sitting over us, it's been a no-go. So nice to read the weather and to realise kind of clears in the afternoon a bit, but yeah, it's always a no-go getting out of Darwin. And always realising just because you can go, but can you get back? So being able to understand that it's not just cold fronts pushing through like it is in Melbourne. So usually you can just see a line in Melbourne, and that was the weather I learnt. It's like, oh, it's just rolling through. Yep, let's go once it's passed. Whereas here it kind of just sits and builds, and that's sort of one thing to get other people's knowledge. In terms of actually in the aircraft, there was one time coming back from Snake Bay. It was like, let's expedite, get out. We had 5 minutes, just a storm rolling in. So got out, made a right turn to track back to Darwin out of Snake Bay. And then I was like, no, I want to track up to the north and right around the east of it. And then my chief pilot was like, no, it's VMC technically, let's go and let's make this a learning experience. And it just realized a more experienced pilot has maybe looser boundaries than what I would have as a low hour pilot. yeah, so I knew that I was uncomfortable in that situation. And I don't know if it'll always be like that, but definitely at the moment I was like, I don't want to fly through like low visibility in any, like, it's particularly in an area I don't know. I'm not very familiar with the airspace up here. I've only done 10 hours or so. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing, is how quickly it can roll through, and yeah, it can just close in. So even though you might have a plan, that plan might quickly go out the window and find a new one.
Yeah, look, it is. It's a huge learning experience, but at the same time, it's probably the best time, if any, to be doing your line training, because you've got that safety blanket of your head of operations and keeping an eye on your check captains, line training pilots, and that. So it's better than coming across it by yourself. Most companies will do wet season training and do some line training as well to help out. Yeah.
And you learn
Isaiah,
5K.
Sorry, go.
Sorry, I just say you learn 5Ks isn't very far.
No,
like
look, it isn't.
No.
It's VMC in the book, but that's 3 miles. It's enough to keep you upright. You can't navigate by it, can you?
No.
Right. So, Zaya, how have you found flying out in Gove and the weather patterns out there compared to back home?
Yeah, well, I had a good sort of introduction. Most of my ICAS was done in Gove with the old chief pilot of Air Arnhem. So he'd done a couple of 1,000 hours on singles in Arnhem Land. So really learnt a lot of local knowledge from him throughout my ICAS training. And I think that's, Chloe touched on it as well. Like, other pilots are definitely your best resources out here, talking to the veteran guys about what the patterns are doing and how they change. And you can see that, like, the wet season is a season, but there's 5 different seasons in that one period of time. So, we started with the big convective activity, all the thunderstorms, and you learn how to navigate those and where they're likely to build. And now we're starting to really see the monsoon kicking off, and that brings its own challenges. So it's about talking to the other guys here who've done maybe 2 or 3 wet seasons, and where the best places to track are, and where you can maybe find the best sort of gaps and areas of less weather.
Yeah. And I guess we're very fortunate up here in the Territory, especially at the top end. There's not a heap of terrain, but especially still heading down towards, Oampelly, Jabiru. You've got the Kakadu and the cliffs and the ranges. It's only 1,000, 1,500 foot high, but that's pretty much where the cloud is, isn't it? So it still presents issues and safety margins.
Oh yeah, definitely. And we're sort of lucky with our operations out here. We definitely operate in that northeast Arnhem Land bubble, so there is very limited terrain. But it's so important to remember when you do get your Darwin flights or your Tyndall flights or whatever, that there is, you do have to really be aware of, where the terrain is and how low the cloud is out that way.
Just do you want to describe where Gove is and what is it like living in such a sort of remote place? And I know you can definitely get a job even more remote than that, but it's pretty much out there on its own, isn't it?
Yeah, so Gove is just sort of on the northeast Arnhem Land coast, and I got really lucky with my remote exposure being based out of Gove. It's just a cracking part of the world, and the flying's pretty special up here. And I think as well, like just a really close group of pilots up here, from both from my company and from other companies. And I think that in itself makes a world of difference. You're all away from family and mates back home. So if you've got like a good group of mates to knock around with, go camping, fishing, all the good NT stuff, then it makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too, that we're all competitors, but really after hours, I don't think the bosses like it so much, but we're all one, aren't we? And everyone gets together and it doesn't really matter. We're all trying to achieve the same objectives and go home each day safe and sound.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you gotta hang out with each other after a big week on the chart, and it makes it a lot of fun.
So did you drive out to Gove, or how did you sort of get some of your personal belongings out there from where you came from?
Yeah, so I made the road trip up from Brisbane to Catherine, and then from Catherine I actually drove our senior base pilot's ute along the Central Arnhem Highway up to Gove, and I got a bit of a bum steer with the Central Arnhem Highway. I was told it wasn't the too difficult or whatever. 12 hours later, potholes for the whole time. It was very much a different story.
Yeah, there's not much paved road out there, is there?
No, it's all dirt roads, buffaloes, everything.
Yeah, and how do you go with getting like supplies and equipment and general day-to-day items and stuff? What's that like?
Oh,
plan ahead a bit more.
Yeah, not too bad. We do have like a weekly barge that comes to go. So if you order something online or whatever, it's a couple of weeks and then it's on your doorstep.
Yeah, no, it's a reasonably well stocked Woolies and stuff there, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it.
Still has takeaway and power poles and
yeah, you count your blessings.
Sort of
it's got a Woolies and a pub. So
yeah, fantastic. And what sort of tips would you give people that might end up living in a remote location? Because again, like from a Darwin point of view, it's usually Groot, Gove, Melangrida are the sort of the main ones.
Yeah, I think maybe just set yourself up as best you can when you're in a capital city. Get things that make your life easier out on the remote areas, and yeah, I think just embrace it as well. Like it's a great experience if you go into it with the right mindset. Living in the remote areas, you see some parts of Australia that not many people get to see. So it's really quite a good experience if you make the most of it.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you're there because people are paying for you to show them all this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's it, isn't it? You get to do it all throughout the year and see it, the seasonal changes and the colours, and it is just as I tell some of our students at the school, you're going to do your PPL cross country nav, out to Kakadu National Park and see things that people travel.
Yeah, how good is that? Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it is. No, fantastic. All right. So let's talk a little bit about supporting yourself in a GA. So Sam, I know you have definitely. So do you want to just talk about what you've done there and what that's like juggling that with a flying roster and things?
Previously at my past instructing job, I worked at Amazon at the same time. So that was like a bit hard. And when you just need a little bit more extra, like you have flight reviews and stuff coming up and you're like, okay, I need more money. So I was doing like night shifts and then like, driving straight to the flight school and working the day there. So that was pretty hectic. And I was like, I'm never going to do that again. And then here I am in Broome. It's been sorted out. Like everybody here just has wet season jobs. So I was like, okay, I need one. Got myself working with Swissport at the airport. So just turning planes and doing customer service, checking them in. But fortunate and also unfortunate, this year around the wet season, Kimberley just got flooded. And so we're getting a lot of work through like DFS and like the medical centres here, just flying supplies out and flying workers out to Fitzroy and Derby. So working at Swissport was like, okay, what do you need? And I was like, okay, I need hours. Just give me any hours. I don't know. I have this days. And then the rostering here is just like, you don't know until 5 p.m. the day before. So I'll just randomly go and last minute flight booking. And it keeps clashing with my second job to a point where the second job was like, well, you're not meeting the minimums. Maybe you should reconsider your position with us. And I was like, oh no. And then now it looks at March calendar, it's like empty. So I'm like struggling to keep both jobs. So I'm like, okay, obviously I have my priority, but also like, I need to live, I need money. So
yes. So, and to clarify, so you're on a casual employment basis.
Yeah,
right?
everybody's on permanent casual here.
Yeah, but everyone else I think is in a full-time salary. I think that's probably the biggest difference, isn't it? That there's a same income every week that you can budget around, whereas yours goes up and down and needs that second job.
Yeah. So sometimes on our roster days off, we'll be put into the office. So we do like operation side of things and we'll start booking and giving quotes and stuff as well. So I need to consider that. I managed to bargain 2 days a week to keep my second job at the airport. So every Saturdays and Mondays now I work at Swissport just until the end of the wet, so I can just pull through, just so that uncertainty is not there.
Yeah. And how are you finding that strain on your sort of fatigue and energy and everything else? Is it a bit hard to juggle apart from just being available to do the work? Or
It does get to you because both jobs thinks that you're have all this time free, and they're like, "Well, you get 2 roster days off. Like what you do on your roster days off, it's up to you." Little do they know that I'm also working at another job, and they're like, "Oh, you haven't done office in a while. It's like my only Sunday off in like 2 weeks, and I have to go into the office and do." So literally, like the past 2 days, like the first days off I had in like 2.5 weeks, I'm like, "Oh, here I am." Deep definitely plays into it. You just have to manage, um, and know when to say no and just like, I can't, I have to break. Um, but yeah, it does get to you after a while. But then you
yeah.
off, but then you have to like shove everything in, like the daily admin stuff that you have to get done, like laundry. Yeah.
Yes, just life. Yeah, look, I remember I was instructing. I was still employed, but I was, started a young family as well. So I would go from the Aero Club, finish at 5, race to Greater Union and start work at 6 till midnight usually, and then drive home and then start again. And that wasn't every night. That was sort of Thursdays and Saturdays usually, but it does add to that fatigue, and you've got to be very, very careful in balancing that between being able to pay the bills and stay awake and be functional as a pilot as well.
Yep.
Yep. All right. So then moving from sort of that mid-level, single engine stuff into like multi and turbines. Alex, you've operated the Conquest, and I think there's a few up here, and it's a fairly common first turbine sort of aircraft. So again, what do you feel the stumbling blocks and the challenges for a new pilot getting into that phase of their career?
The biggest, I guess, thing that people struggle with when they first get on the Conquest is the speed of it. Instead of cruising around at 150 knots in a 210 to 170 knots in like a piston twin, I've hit 350 knots in the cruise before. So not only, you have to build that solid foundation throughout your piston twin IFR in order to have your procedures set, what you're doing, so that when you just jump in a quicker plane, you can have all that stuff sorted, and then you just have to worry about, figuring out where your top of descent is and being able to calculate that. Obviously, operating an aircraft like a Conquest, where you're pressurized, it doesn't really matter so much about your descent. You could descend at 1,000 foot per 3 miles, or you could do 1,000 foot per 2 miles. You can adjust it because you're pressurized. So even if you kind of stuff it up, you can recover. You just have to be able to handle the speed. And if that means just bringing the power back and descending at idle, or being able to manage it and being able to send a little bit quicker, you can manage it no matter what you do. You just have to be aware of how you're tracking to be able to manage it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, look, I think top of descent is a classic. Even talking to my good friends at Air North, pilots just struggling to do the math. And I think a symptom of that is so much time in flight training, and people rarely get much above 3,500 feet. Usually because of overlying airspace or whatever else, can't get a clearance into it. So, we're here now, we'll just stay instead of getting up above 5,000 plus. Have you found that, Isaiah, as well, with your flying and things, especially with weather and that around, but just cruising altitudes and not coming down too soon or overshooting airports to begin with?
Yeah, definitely. Like, starting off in the dry, and you had the ability to pick any sort of level out here, you do have to stay on top of it, and sometimes catches you off guard, and you might be a bit late or a bit early, and having to adjust like that on the fly. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, trying to get the gear and the flap out, it's just smashing down, and
that's it.
Cool. All right, Mike. So again, similar situation for yourself. Starting out, you progressed with the instrument rating, and the Seminole was the common thing, and then you moved into something a little bit bigger. So how did you make that transition, mate? how's that process for you?
Well, it's been, and being older, that's been, and as Alex alluded to, that is the task at hand, is staying ahead and planning. But fortunately, I'm pretty nerdy with numbers and that, so that, I'm still getting there. But crunching numbers and planning that, and just listening to the 3x1 or 2x1 descents, and the tried and tested techniques. But yeah, big jump, but wouldn't miss it for quids.
And just to explain that, a 3-to-1 ratio would be, if you're at 20,000 feet, you would need 60 miles to descend. If you wanted to do 2-to-1, then you'd need 40 miles, which is obviously much steeper. And how did you prepare for all, you're going from a Seminole, which is a very basic, twin. It's advanced when you first get to it, but as you remember, but once you get used to it, it's pretty straightforward. But now you've got this aeroplane where the QRH just quadruples in size and thickness, and so many more checks, procedures, emergency procedures.
Yeah, well, fortunately, just like about half of your crew here today, I was a teacher in my previous life, and so again, I'm pretty good at sort of self-study. The way the cards fell, I had a couple of months break between getting the nod and my start date, so I just sucked up every little bit of info I could about it, and grabbed a training manual, one of the good old flight safety training manuals, and from the company, and just started trying to sponge up as much of that tech and systems as I could to try and minimize the tidal wave, basically.
Yeah. So how would you? One of the big issues is, I think, coming from a flight school training environment where you're reasonably handheld, because we're nice people, to an airline check-in training system where it's much more self-guided, as you said, when they're more there to just take you through the exercises and sign you off. So did you find that a big difference? And what advice would you give?
Yeah, definitely. Because
I know this is a big issue with people facing this at the moment.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you really need to, it sounds obvious when you hear it or say it out loud, but you really need to, set aside time. And even when you think you're prepared, you need to maybe go back and just read through JEPs again. Or that's my case in particular. I knew that was a spotty area, because I didn't have a lot of IFR time between getting my initial rating and getting this gig. So have a look at it and go, right, where are my weak spots, and just laser beam them. Yeah.
And cockpit layout can be quite complicated as well. And there's a lot of things that have big cockpit photos and things we call paper tigers.
Yep.
And do you want to just take us through your
clearly,
your mock cockpit of what you set up, mate? Because I just thought I have to send a photo to everyone.
Right.
I'll put it online if you let me.
No.
But I thought it was just brilliant.
I'm happy to do that.
It was. Thanks,
Trent. You're the first one who thought it wasn't stuffed in the head. I've got to use those words for this time rating. So what I did was I managed to borrow one of the posters, which is sort of A3 size, and I scanned it into my computer. Again, I had time to do this because of the delay in my start date. So I scanned it in at the highest resolution setting I could on my little A4 printer scanner at home, and then I used Adobe to stitch all of that together and made sure each bit overlapped. So it was a little bit of nerdy stuff, but then I had I then went online and found people had made real life cockpits, managed to gouge out how wide a real Dash 8 cockpit was. And then I scaled it up to that, took it along to Officeworks, researched Officeworks and found what size prints they do. And the lady loved me because I knew exactly which file I wanted onto what size poster. And then we get Dinnerly, free plug there, food supported. So we had it delivered. So we had a ton of boxes, and I just made up a cardboard, blue tacked it onto that, and it's in the spare room. I got a 1-to-1.
Yeah. Like you obviously built cubby houses as a kid, because I saw it and I just thought that is so good.
Well, again, you look at it. I knew that, like I said before, those weak areas, and I thought, what have I got on my side? Right, I got time, so I'm going to science this, and so that's.
Yeah, so it's who said that? It was Science of Shit Out of It.
That's
That was Matt Damon.
yeah,
wasn't
Matt
it?
Damon, The Martian.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
The Martian. Yeah. Yeah. Look, I think that the whole paper tiger thing it's just essential, isn't it? Like I did exactly the same with the King Air, and no doubt Alex is going to be doing the same when she gets into Qantas. With just it's as much as knowing where the eyes need to go, the touch drills, the checks, what the gauges look like, what is the information on the gauge showing, how do I translate that?
And
especially just from engine failures and emergency drills is just, I know I need to look at that, but what is it trying to tell me and how do I process it so I can actually do something?
Exactly. And given what Alex said about, where people are struggling with that ability to transition due to the just performance of the machine, you're then, in terms of muscle mind memory, and you're making one sort of stronger area in you sitting there and trying to balance all of those tasks. So you're trying to, take some pressure off and give some little bit of cognitive horsepower across to those areas.
Yeah, I definitely look. Taking responsibility for your own learning is absolutely paramount. And if you don't, you're going to find it a struggle town.
Yep.
So, Austin, have you had a chance to get some materials for what you're about to go into? What sort of prep have you done, given you're going to start shortly?
I'm still waiting on a few documents. They've advised that they probably won't send anything in particular out until I actually would go there on Monday. They just said they want to keep it as an internal training, so they haven't emailed in particular. But I've just done the normal POH research on the party bus. I've flown it beforehand, so it's just good to have all this information coming back. But I haven't received anything in particular.
Yeah, all right. What about from the IFR perspective? What have you done there? I guess you've got an IPC you're going to have to do soon.
Oh, I've just done it. Yeah, I did it in the beginning of Feb. That was my first IPC. So I did my initial multi-engine instrument in 2019. And from not doing anything IFR related up until February was definitely difficult because, you never recall it, you never do anything about it. But it was great to get back into the books, spare time after work or even, on lunch breaks, just jump into the sim, do a couple of approaches. The guys at Bass Air as well were fantastic. You could ask all the multi-engine instructors, your colleagues that were also doing IPC. So I think I was the third person to do it in that same period. So I had two other guys doing it as well, which was great. It was bounce off, your knowledge to each other. And just thank goodness there was a sim there that I could practice it, and at home as well.
Yeah, well, definitely the advantage of working at a flight school, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
So Sam, do you want to take me through your IPC experience, which I had the pleasure of being involved with? Like we had the complete opposite, didn't we? We're operating out of Broome, no training aids, no sim. So do you want to take me through your IPC experience? Hopefully it's a good one because I did it, but you know what I mean, just the preparation side of things.
Nah, it was really good. Like what Alex said before, like if you don't keep it currently, you're just learning something new. And with the new Part 91 that came out December last year, I'm just like, oh geez, like everything is new and different. So how I usually prep is I make a little folder for different aircraft and like different operations. So like each aircraft have their own little like checklist, and I'll just pull that out, and that's like my reference thing. So I make sure I made one with the IPC that we did. And it was also flying 310, like I've never flown it before. So I was like, oh, okay. So me and my coworker, we went out there and sat in aircraft by ourselves and just playing around with the knobs and what does this do, kind of just gotten used to it just a little bit before we actually hop into the flight. And I did beg Trent and be like, can we just please have like a few training flights before the actual thing? Because we were just like, feeling a bit Gumby, not too sure. It's a little different than a 210. So we did a couple of online sessions, which is really, really helpful just to get a refresher. And then Trent made it really easy for us of being always available and say, just shoot us a question. If you have anything, like just ask. So we compile we do like group studies because one of our multi-IFR guys here. He used to be in multi-IFR training, so he helped us a lot with his notes and sat down and just ran through approaches again and all these holdings and stuff, just really just refresher stuff. And we compile questions, and then we'll just like shoot it all out to Trent at once. So like, oh, so what's this? And then here's a list of questions that we have. Yeah, it was really, really enjoyable. And because it was my initial, you just think it's going to be a flight test, but it's not really. I know all this stuff. Like, ask me all these questions. I did all this prep. And it's like, oh, yeah, no, that was it. Cool. Let's go flying. You're like, oh, okay. So, yeah. But you have to prep for it.
Yeah, you absolutely do. Yeah. And so to make up for the lack of simulator, I pointed you in the direction of some online web-based simulators. So obviously it's not using a yoke and stick, but we use that. And also some iPad apps where it's just the nav aid, but you can fly the approach, see what the needles are doing. So there's a lot of sources out there that if you don't have access to a sim, at least you can do this other stuff and practice that way. And I think you've had it very helpful. You asked me something, so I screen recorded an approach, and it just helped set the scene, because in Broome, the NDB is still very much a kind of a must-have nav aid, isn't it?
Yeah, we don't have anything. Like, we don't have URs or anything, so we have to rely on this NTB. Oh God, I haven't done those in ages. And you're like, okay, here we go. There's good simulators and like online thing where you just like click around and the little airplane just like turns and you're like, okay, so where am I orientating myself again? Yeah, that's really good help.
Yeah, it can get confusing. Chloe, you didn't end up doing an instructor rating or instrument rating, did you?
No, thank you. Not for me.
and so take me through that. Was that because you applied and you got a job and that kind of decided for you, or you just thought I might wait a little bit? Or
I did the teaching thing.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I've done it. I've been a teacher. I like know what the patient's required is. They test your boundaries. And they're just, 15-year-olds. I don't know how I'd feel about an adult next to me landing a plane and doing a couple of, crash hot landings. So, it just was never for me. And I always just wanted to get into the charter. I guess I never stopped studying, like out of high school, went to uni, went back to school to teach, and then was doing like studying nights and stuff to do my flight training. I just never stopped studying. So I think I just wanted to work and not have to, worry about trying to, So I haven't done ATPLs. I just did my instrument rating and then was like, that's enough for now. Let's just work and enjoy life, get some experience, make some memories. We'll look at things in a year's time, see what happens.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
All right. Alex, take me through applying to Qantas. So what was your process? How did you prepare yourself? What happened? Everyone's keen to know. What's the story? This would take about half an hour if you do it right. So
I have, throughout the years while I've been up in Darwin, I have applied for Qantas Link in the past. I was unsuccessful for those. I just started working up in Darwin, getting some more experience, and the opportunity came out, obviously, when Mainliner advertised about a year ago. On literally day one, within an hour, I submitted my application. And I was fortunate enough, about 2 months later, I heard back about the psychometric testing. That was probably the hardest psychometric testing I've ever done. It seems to have changed it over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And
so let's just talk about that. So when I did it, it was over a day. There was a bunch of things, your spatial reasoning, you're trying to fold up a stupid cube, and what's the instruments indicating the airplane's doing, and what's the next dot stupid pattern sequence on the, why do I need to know this? What are they doing now?
There was one was a big psychological questionnaire to try and determine what kind of person you are. You had to...
The German Wings assessment?
Yeah, basically. They'll give you 3 options. None of them were good, but you had to pick the best one that described you. So there was, I did a lot of practice ones as well in the lead up to make sure I wasn't a psychopath. But it would ask you, do you talk too much? What's horrible things in the cockpit? I don't know. Basically 3 really bad things, and you were to pick the least worst and hope that you obviously weren't that as well.
Yeah.
And then there was about 100 plus questions, and they would just give the same answers but with different ones. So you had to make sure you were consistent. So obviously you can't lie about it.
Yeah.
And it just went through so many times, and you're just like, I hope I didn't come across like a talkative, irritating, I don't know, suicidal person.
Yeah, I think that's the point. Like you say, that these things are created by people much smarter than us, and they do ask the same thing multiple times. And I remember when I was doing it, I could see one that was just really asking, can I sit still for long periods of time, which I can't, but I was all over that one. So of course I can, you make sure you answer that one the same way multiple times. But I didn't really want to do long haul anyway, so it wasn't a drama. All right. And what else? Are they doing the joystick navigating it's kind of like the old speed racer game where you got to
there was none of that.
That all gone?
Yeah, I haven't seen that one in a good number of years. The only other ones that they had, there was numerical, logical reasoning,
verbal reasoning,
trying to pick the next pattern, read this paragraph, and what did you pull from that paragraph, to see, one, how quickly you can read, and can you actually pull the information out as well.
Yeah, not based on your own knowledge of that subject, which is the trap.
Yeah, there's no knowledge required, but practice is really good, especially with the patterns and the pick the next number sequences. You have to have practiced, but yeah, intelligence doesn't really play a part in it. You just have to be quick and accurate. They always say, make sure you do as many questions as you can, but accuracy is also better than doing more.
Were they all, did you have to go to Sydney for that, to go to Qantas headquarters for that, or is that all done at home now?
The psychometric testing, they just send you a link, and you get a period of time that you have to have opened the link and complete the task. It's not until the actual interview stage that you have to fly to Brisbane.
All right, cool. So let's talk about that then. So we've got the interview, and then we've got the sim check.
Yeah.
So how was the interview? How did you prepare for that, and what happened?
There was a lot of reading. I ended up sitting in a cafe one morning when I landed in Brisbane, because I caught the midnight flight over, and I had about 6 hours before I was able to check in. So I ended up rewriting the entire AIP just because, for me personally, I can't read and remember. I need to have written it down. So I typed it in better English than what CASA can write into my own document to try to understand the law a bit better and be able to practically apply it in situations. So I'd write like an example of where that might be the case.
Well, in fairness, Air Services wrote the ARP, so, it can't be.
Well, the law side
they're
of
all bad as each other, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then, just I did a pinstripe solution, their little video course online, just due to the lack of time available. I wasn't able to actually be able to have a one-on-one coaching session with them. But in the past, I was lucky enough to have done that already. So I kind of was able to bring that knowledge forward and just be able to work it out myself. And then, it was just basically a lot of reading, obviously what I do at the moment, because they could question you on your current operations. They'd question you on the law, and then they obviously need the human factor or the behavioural side of the interview as well.
Yeah, right. And how many people were in the interview room apart from yourself?
The actual interview was broken down into 3 separate stages. There was 4 candidates on the day, for my group. One would be pulled off for a technical interview, which was just myself and a pilot.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had a behavioural interview, which involved one HR lady and a captain as well. So that was just done individually. And then after that, all 4 candidates, we got pulled in and we did a group exercise where there was 3 employees watching us interact together playing this game, which was actually the most fun.
All right, awesome. Yeah, well, I think that's very much a focus now of that crew interaction is obviously what they're looking at there, and it's just someone that can get along on a flight deck with people they've never met before, because that's essentially what happens every day you go to work in an airline that size. Yeah, awesome. All right. So then how long after that process did you get well done, you passed that part, and now we want you to come and fly an airplane you've never flown before in the sim?
So after the interview, we went home, and then by the end of that day, we were notified if we were going through to the simulator assessment or not. So I got the yes that night, about 6 hours later, which I was stressing over for that time. And the simulator happened to be 2 weeks later. So I actually had to fly home and then fly back again to go do the simulator, which was in the 767 sim. So if you do happen to somehow get into a 767 sim before, lucky you. Otherwise, I just jumped in the 737 sim to practice. They were able to change some of the instruments to be similar enough to the 76, and it honestly helped a lot.
Yeah, and did the ATPL systems knowledge from the 7.6 sort of, did you have those books and things you could look up the avionics again? And
oh God, no.
Burnt those long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. And how was the sim ride? What did they do there?
They send you out a profile for what you're going to do. I was extremely lucky that the 2 approach plates that you have to do were both Darwin, and I do those approaches daily. So I basically didn't need to look at the plate, which was awesome. But you just jump in. It's a full motion sim, which is probably the biggest thing to get your head around, because in the little aircraft, you tend to over control. And when you jump into the jet aircraft, if you try to operate it the same way, the motion will be jumping you around everywhere and it'll make it far more difficult. So that was probably the hardest thing, but it was just a basic takeoff. We did a couple of turns, steep turns, intercepts on an RMI, and then came back around for 2 approaches. He talked me through landing, which was the teaching component to see how you go with that. For others, if you don't do the steep turn so well, they might try to teach you how to do it better and then see how you take that advice on board. But yeah, I got to land the sim, and then that was kind of the end of that. And I had to wait about 2 weeks, and then I finally got an email saying I was on the hold file.
Yay. And so that was that October? I'm trying to think when we...
That was July.
July, that's right. I'm trying to think when we were in Brisbane together, because we were there with you just as on a holiday, just as you were trying to comfort you.
And I came home rest as anything.
Yeah, I know, it's horrible. Flew home with Amanda because I already left early. All right, and then so what's the go now? What have they told you? What you're going to fly? What you've been assigned to, and what's the process?
Yeah, I've been offered the A330, based in Sydney, so I'll be a second officer flying that. I was thinking, and I was trying to get as much information as I can to try to prep for the start. But from what everyone has told me, basically, it's best to go in there with kind of a clean plate. Know your law, but they'll teach you everything you need to know about the aircraft throughout it. So I haven't been too stressed about pre-prepping.
Yeah, no, good on you. That's fantastic. Brilliant. All right, look, thank you, everybody. I think it's really, really great to just hear all those stories and all the variations of what you've done and how you've got to where you are now. Has anybody got a question for someone else before we wrap up?
Maybe just if Mike is subcontracting out those paper tigers.
I'll show you. I'll get Mike. Can I post it on? I'll put it on Patreon if that's all right, mate. It's really just brilliant.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I still use it a bit at the moment, mate. But yeah. If you have something develop in the future, let me know.
I think I'll need one for the A330.
That took me ages, mate.
No, it was fantastic. And look, they are for renewals and IPCs down the line. It's just great to pull it out again. A lot of the sim centers obviously have them there set up just to sit at and work it through yourself in your own time. All right, so just to wrap up, starting with Chloe, where do you sort of see your career going, and what sort of thought? Obviously, you've just started, so there's no rush. But what's your sort of eventual goal? Where do you want to go, and how do you sort of think you might try and structure that? Obviously, things change, but
Yeah, so I'd love airlines long haul. I guess I've just had family in the airlines and I've seen it, and I think the lifestyle would suit me. And I just want to fly the biggest aircraft I can. So if I can get there, I work my butt off to try and get there.
of course you will. Yeah, brilliant. All right, and Sam?
I've always wanted to diversify my flying. So if I can like fly in like Alaska, the US, and then like also go back home in Asia and fly there as well, that'll be fantastic. Looking at cargo like freight, I would love to do those. This is like you fly such like interesting things. Like I've heard so many people like fly like 2,000 goats, like, and there's like curious cars. I'm like, hell yeah, I want to do that. So eventually something like that would be really appealing to me.
Yeah, okay. Awesome. I haven't had that answer before. All right, Isaiah?
Yeah, I mean, such a broad industry, and I'm still a pretty low hour pilot, so it's pretty hard to say. But I think get the opportunity to do some single pilot IFR, that'd be awesome, and then hopefully finish the career with a logbook filled with different aircraft and flying all over the world.
Yeah, magic. Austin?
It changes every week, to be honest, especially when you see on Instagram that everything's changing. But corporate pilot is where I usually want to probably end up, somewhere in America, flying your global. The 7500 is one of my dream aircrafts, to be honest. So that the 5000 is also quite nice. If that doesn't work, definitely like Chloe long haul, mainline. So probably with Singapore Airlines or Qatar would be quite nice. But at the moment, it's definitely that corporate flying and the check-in training, maybe.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, Mike?
Something, probably move up captain with the regional airline where I am in the near future. And they may or may not have a jet, which would be nice to be offered that after that.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, and Alex, I guess we're kind of almost there, but do you think you'd...
Yeah, the only thing that could make my job better now would be able to go into checking and training. It was literally what I wanted to do from the get-go, which is why I tried to get the experience in GA.
Yeah.
So yeah, hopefully I'll be a Qantas check-in trainer one day.
Yeah, why not? No, that's brilliant. Look, everyone, I think it's what it highlights is this is what I tell people when they're originally learning to fly is it's like getting on a bus and it'll go to a destination, but there's all the side routes and all the side stops, and it's not necessarily the most efficient way to get there, but it can change. And that, I think that's the beauty of what we do. And as I think you're all starting to find as you go through your own journey, you're becoming aware of other opportunities that you never knew of or never heard of. And you don't have to have that terminal goal right now. You know, it can come up later on. So, yeah. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. I really appreciate you all giving up your time this morning and this afternoon for some of you. And, look, I wish you all the very best for your future endeavours, and keep me posted on how it's all going.
Thanks, Trent.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right, guys. Take care. Cheers. All right, that's it for this week's episode. Thanks again to the team for coming on board and having a chat. I hope you found it interesting. If you've got any questions, comments, feedback, anything at all, you can reach me at info@trentrobinsonaviation.com.au. If email's not your thing, you can jump on the socials. Instagram, Facebook, Trent Robinson Aviation. Do a search for that. Otherwise, Instagram. No, I said Instagram. What else have we got here? Oh, I've just got TikTok going. You can find me on TikTok now at Flight Training Australia. And, of course, Patreon. If you'd like to support the show, jump on there. I love your support. You can follow me without any pledges at all, or you can jump on board as a monthly contributor. You'll also find Mike's Paper Tiger photo there. So if you want to see that, head across and have a look on patreon.com/Flight Training Australia. All the links in the episode description for the podcast player that you're using right now. Alrighty, that is it for now. Next week, we're going to talk aeromedical. All right, until then, blue skies, and remember the golden rule. Aviate, navigate, communicate. Cheers, guys.